I want to talk really quickly about how Marjorie Taylor Greene is using Charlie Kirk's death as a chance to hop back on her bullshit about how we need a, quote, national divorce. This is something she's said multiple times in the past. It's incredibly incendiary and dangerous rhetoric. Greene is quoted in this piece by Elizabeth Crisp in The Hill entitled, "Greene Revives Call for National Divorce After Kirk Killing." So apparently, Marjorie said, "There is nothing left to talk about with the left. They hate us. To be honest, I want a peaceful national divorce. Our country is too far gone and too far divided. It's no longer safe for any of us." Keep in mind, Greene and others have been using Charlie Kirk's death. If you look through all of the evidence around Tyler Robinson, who has been arrested, again, innocent until proven guilty. While I had my afternoon cup of coffee, I sifted through everything that's been released so far. I do think, right, as a non-attorney, I do think it's weird that they are releasing so much and whether or not that's going to potentially poison a jury pool. But I looked through all of that and I could not find a single place where they could connect Tyler Robinson to any group on the left or any claim that he has made that he is on the political left. We know he's not a registered Democrat, and there is no known association that he had with any group, either mainstream establishment Democrat or politically further left. And yet we're seeing Donald Trump, we're seeing JD Shorty Pants Vance, we're seeing Nancy Mace, we're seeing so many Republicans, and not just Republicans, y'all, fucking members of the establishment media who are bought and paid for by the Trump regime, who have bent the knee, who are absolutely being a propaganda machine for the right. They're all making it sound like Tyler Robinson is on the left with no evidence that points to that fact. Unless, investigators are holding on to that information, but considering everything else that they have released, again, that could potentially poison a jury pool. I would be shocked if they were sitting on some definitive connection to any left-leaning political group or any statements Tyler had made in the past that would connect him to any left-leaning political group, and they wouldn't be shouting and screaming and plastering that all over the internet. You think they would be keeping that in their back pocket for later? And it's not just that, right? There's been this big internet discourse about the fact that it seems far more likely that Tyler was involved in some of this 4chan gamer alt-right kind of an ecosystem, and his political persuasions may have been to the right of Charlie Kirk. So when we see these claims from Marjorie Taylor Greene that everybody on the left hates everybody on the right and that we need a national divorce and the country is too far gone, I want you to think about what is the motivation for her to be spewing that kind of rhetoric. What's she hoping for? I mean, it's weird if the shooter is to the right politically of Charlie Kirk. I don't hear Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for greater factionalism on the right. I don't hear her calling for like a, red versus red divorce. She's been saying since at least February of this year that she wants a national divorce where you physically separate red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. She wants to split the country in half. Except it's more than that, because how are you defining red state versus blue state? I've said many, many times, there's no such thing as red states in the US, y'all. There's just heavily gerrymandered purple states. There's just purple states with intense voter suppression, especially of their non-white residents. There are more people who voted for Donald Trump in California than in the entire state of Arkansas. There are more people who voted for Donald Trump in California than there are in the entire state of Montana. And yet this red versus blue narrative that we see from folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we don't just see it from her, we see it from people all over the political spectrum. Like, it's a false narrative. We are one country, the United States of America. This perception of red versus blue, this false binary, is a tremendous failing of our political system, and people with nefarious intent will leverage that false narrative to try to achieve their goals. Now, there was a YouGov poll about this back in late February, early March that asked the American people, what do you think about Marjorie Taylor Greene's idea to have a national divorce? And 69% of registered Democrats said fuck no, and 60% of Republicans said no. To me, that's a startling number of people who might be okay or buy into this false narrative that there actually is a red America and a blue America and that division happens along state lines, We do live in a country where we do not have a shared reality. People on the political right are experiencing a different America than people on the left. They are witnessing the same events and drawing radically different conclusions. They have a very, very different worldview and a very, very different reality that they are experiencing. That I agree with. That divide exists in that sense. But a geographic divide, state by state, absolutely not. That doesn't exist at all. And spinning up that kind of rhetoric, I just wonder what Marjorie Taylor Greene's motivation is here. Who benefits when we have a country that is intensely divided? Who benefits when the working class across America are pitted against each other, are at odds with each other? Who benefits when we see our neighbor as our enemy? Who benefits when we are distracted, fighting other working class people, dehumanizing, attacking other working class people? Yeah, right. Let's think about the goals here. Let's think about the fringe, nonsensical conspiracy theory, isolationist politics of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But then let's also think about Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, who is funded by billionaires and supports billionaires, empowers billionaires, funnels our tax money up to billionaires, gives lucrative government contracts to billionaires, is eroding worker rights, wanting to make it so workers in the United States have a harder time paying rent, a harder time earning a living, while at the same time we subsidize the extravagant lifestyles of the super rich. Who benefits in that scenario by having working class people villainize each other and fight against each other? It's the super rich, so that we don't actually turn against our real oppressor, so that we don't actually gain class consciousness. They want us distracted and hurting each other so that we forget who our true adversary is, so that we forget who the true source of our oppression is. I want to keep talking about this. I think this is an important thread to keep pulling. This is an important thing that we need to actually be discussing more and more. They want us to dehumanize each other. They want us to reduce it down to red versus blue, to right versus left. They want to create a false binary of us versus them. They want you to be separated from your neighbor, to be fearful and mistrustful of your neighbor, because you are far easier to control that way. If they keep us divided with things like arguments for a national divorce, if they keep using rhetoric that tells us we should dehumanize people who have different politics than us, it becomes easier for us to not only be fearful of our neighbor, but then to dehumanize them and then commit violence against them. And while we are consumed with being afraid, full of anxiety, or alternately full of rage and aggression, they are busy dismantling this country, stripping away your rights, consolidating wealth and power amongst the elites. This kind of rhetoric about a national divorce, extremely, extremely incendiary. This continued framing from Republicans of us versus them, of the radical left versus the right, of some kind of political war. And not only that, from people on the left who just want to paint your average Trump voter, not like diehard MAGA, but your average Trump voter as stupid, as uninformed, as just some kind of uneducated hicks, instead of my fellow working class Americans who, a couple of decades ago were hardcore labor movement, always voted blue, but were turned off by the way that, corporate wealthy Democrats like the Clintons betrayed them, abandoned their communities, right? These are our fellow Americans. These are people who are being oppressed by the super rich, just like you and I are. Reminding them of our humanity and us remembering theirs. That's the first step to getting out of this. We need a broad-based coalition. We need working class solidarity. We need the people to come together and realize our power. Conversations about divorce, division, stoking political wars, that benefits only one group of people. They're trying to use us. They're using us. They're manipulating our emotions. They're creating fear on purpose to control us. Please understand, when people like Marjorie Taylor Greene talk about national divorce, someone benefits from that rhetoric. And it's not you or I. It's not the American people.